When I walked into the bar on Friday, I almost immediately spotted Jack and approached him for one of those awkward hugs that men do. "Damn, Jack," I exclaimed. "It's been 10 years, but I recognized you right away. You haven't changed a bit." "Neither have you," he replied. "I heard you got married. It looks like family life suits you." We found a booth in a quiet corner and ordered a couple of beers. In college, we were roommates and good friends, but after graduation, we drifted apart. Jack took a job in another city while I stayed in Chicago. We had largely lost touch until I happened to learn that he had moved back here a couple of years ago to work in sales. "So, how about you?" I asked. "Why didn't you get married?" I remembered that Jack had been pretty active in the dating scene back in college. He never had trouble finding girlfriends, but he never seemed to stay with them for long. "I guess I'm not as lucky as you," he said with a smile. But when he spoke, I thought I saw a hint of pain in his eyes. I tried to lift the mood. "That's the problem with you playboys," I joked. "Once you start looking, you can't stop." The expression on his face made it clear that my joke had hit a nerve. He shook his head grimly. "Oh, I tried to find a wife, but when it came to the greatest love in the world, I was catastrophically unlucky." "Some kind of problem?" "Funny that you should ask," he said. I could tell something was really bothering him, so I settled more comfortably into the booth and said, "Why don't you tell me about it?" He signaled the waitress to bring us another round, and after she did, he began his story. It all started about a month ago. The day began crazily, as is typical in the commodities market. But around noon, my boss walked into the office with a woman. "This is Carla," he said. "She'll be working in your area. I want you to show her the ropes and help her get started." I have to say, when I looked at her, something happened to me. I've met many attractive women, but none had ever affected me the way she did. It was strange. She wasn't beautiful by model standards, and her clothes weren't particularly revealing, but something about her just knocked me off my feet. I never believed in love at first sight or the idea that there's only one woman for a man, but Carla made me feel like a teenage boy for the first time. It was astonishing and disorienting, and I felt completely helpless. I sat down next to her to discuss what she needed to know about the job. It didn't take me long to see that she was very bright and incredibly attractive. This combination has always drawn me in. As we talked, I tried not to stare at her, but I don't think I was always successful. She didn't seem bothered by it, though. She just listened attentively to everything I had to say, taking notes in her notebook. After spending some time with her, I suggested that she work independently for a bit, and then we can have lunch together. "And I'll answer any questions you have," I told her. Usually I don't go on dates with colleagues from the office. It creates problems. But I already knew that with Carla, I was going to break my rule. During lunch, I hoped to learn more about her. I had already noticed the absence of a wedding ring. However, it seemed like she might have had one in the past, so I assumed she was divorced. But while we ate, I couldn't learn much more about her because she wanted to talk only about me and what I do at work. When an attractive woman constantly asks questions about you, it's hard not to feel flattered, and before I knew it, lunch was over. Even though I didn't get to know Carla better, I really enjoyed being with her. That day took a turn for the worse when Hank Malone walked in. Hank is my biggest competitor at work. We were hired at the same time, and our careers have run parallel to each other. But Hank didn't see it that way. He always bragged about his achievements and constantly had some big project that was supposedly going to earn him a hefty bonus. His arrogance wasn't limited to work. He also liked to boast about his sexual conquests, and he wasn't shy about dating people at the office. From what I could tell, he attracted the attention of several women in the office, leaving a few broken hearts in the process. So I wasn't pleased when Hank suddenly appeared and introduced himself to Carla. "If you need to know anything, just come to me," he said in his loud voice. "I'm closely connected with upper management, so if you need anything, I can arrange it." I clenched my teeth at his obvious ploy, but I couldn't say anything about how I felt without coming across as a jealous schoolboy. To make matters worse, Carla seemed to completely believe him. She warmly thanked him and promised to call. Trading commodities can be quite exhausting, and for many of us, it's a common practice to stop by a nearby pub after work to unwind before heading home. I mentioned this to Carla, and she agreed to come along. So after we closed our deals for the day, I took Carla to our favorite spot to grab a drink and introduced her to the rest of the crew. Everything was going well until Frank showed up. He pushed his way through the group, sat next to Carla, and proceeded to monopolize her attention. Even with all the noisy chatter in the pub, it was easy to hear Frank bragging about himself and his bright prospects. What's more, Carla seemed to hang on his every word. However, before she left, Carla leaned in and thanked me for making her feel welcomed on her first day at work. That made me feel a bit better. The rest of the week went similarly. Carla and I didn't have lunch together every day, but we often took coffee breaks together. Likewise, on some days, Carla didn't join us at the pub, but when she did, she was an attentive listener, only speaking up to ask a thoughtful question. Of course, Hank continued to hover around her like a bee around a flower. Carla must have known he was pursuing her, but she didn't seem to discourage him. It was me she was cooling off. So one day we happened to visit the restroom at the same time, and he didn't miss the chance to declare his intentions regarding Carla. "She's eating out of my hand," he boasted. "Soon I'll be giving her a tour of my bedroom, if you know what I mean," he added with a smirk. Strangely enough, I found Hank's bragging somewhat reassuring. The way he talked suggested that Carla hadn't succumbed to his persistent advances, which made me think I still had a chance with her. In fact, I felt that my relationship with Carla was developing, though in a strange way. For instance, she initially showed a lot of interest in me, my work, and my lifestyle, always encouraging me to talk about myself. She probably learned more about me than some of the old girlfriends I had dated for months. However, despite her interest, she seemed reserved and cautious around me, as if she couldn't let her guard down. I was going crazy trying to figure out what I had said or done to cause such a reaction. But after a while, to my great relief and delight, her attitude seemed to change significantly. She began to relax and seemed to feel much more at ease with me. I started to pick up on some of those small signals that women use when they're saying, "I'm interested, I like you." All of this would have been very encouraging if it weren't for the fact that she continued to pay too much attention to Hank. I couldn't understand it. We would just have a great little conversation, and then, when Hank showed up, she would drop everything to listen to him. Of course, Hank never missed an opportunity to rub it in my face, telling me how much time Carla was spending with him. "Admit it, buddy, you might be her friend, but the pleasure she gets is from me. I'm going to get under her skirt in no time. Just wait and see," he bragged. I didn't believe him, but I couldn't deny that Carla seemed to be dividing her time between the two of us. I'm not naive when it comes to women. I know how to make them laugh, how to flatter them without being obvious, how to flirt without being rude, and generally how to interact with them in a way that keeps their interest. I'll admit that I used all my tricks on Carla to get her attention. In the past, when I did this, it was a kind of game for me, but with Carla, it was deadly serious. I didn't care about winning or losing before, but now it felt like a matter of life and death, and I was desperate to keep this relationship alive. What made things even more confusing was that all the usual signals I was getting from her indicated that my efforts were working, that she was responding positively to my romantic advances. But she still wasn't giving Hank the cold shoulder. One day I found out from my sources at the office that Hank had asked Carla out on a date, and she had turned him down. I decided it was time to make my own move. If nothing else, I could at least find out if Carla was truly interested in me or not. So late in the evening, I approached her at her desk. "Hey, Carla," I said casually, "how about we grab a bite to eat after work?" "With the gang at the pub?" she asked. "No, just the two of us," I said. "I want to talk about something, and the pub is too noisy." "I'm not sure if that's a good idea," she replied hesitantly. "It's just like if we went out with the rest of the gang," I assured her, "but it will be a bit easier to talk." "Well, all right," she said, and I had to resist the urge to jump with excitement at the prospect of being alone with her. I took her to a great nearby spot, very quiet and understudded, with candles on the table. Charming, but not too fancy. During dinner, we chatted a bit about the office and our responsibilities. Then I gradually shifted the conversation to how well she was fitting into our group, the significant contributions she had made to our work, and how much everyone liked her. I could tell she appreciated it. Then I continued talking about how much I enjoyed working with her, how she made the job easier, and how her smile and laughter brightened my day. "The thing is, Carla, It's hard for me to think of you just as a colleague, I told her sincerely. I really want to get to know you better because I'm developing feelings for you. She quietly exclaimed, "Oh!" and instinctively reached out to grab my hand and squeeze it. But then a conflicted expression appeared on her face, and she let go. I really like you too, Jack, but I'm not sure if this is a good idea. There are things you don't know about me, things that might make you feel differently about me. At that point, I reached across the table and took her hands in mine. I don't care about what you had in the past, I said seriously. I see you every day at work, and I know what kind of person you are. I also know how I feel when I'm around you. Her eyes sparkled, and for a moment I thought she might lean across the table and seal the deal with a kiss. But at the last moment, she seemed to regain control over herself and pulled back. I can't deny that I've thought about you a lot too, she said, but this is all happening too fast for me to process. Please don't pressure me. Give me a little time. I looked into her eyes. I'll wait as long as you need, I promised. You're worth waiting for. I thought she was going to say something else, but she held back again. Shortly after that, she left for home. Did I just take a giant step forward, or did I completely blow it? I wondered as I took a taxi back to my apartment. The next day, she, of course, went to lunch with Hank, and I clenched my teeth in frustration as I continued eating my sandwich at my desk. On Friday evening, we all returned to the pub, and the drinks flowed a bit more freely than usual in celebration of a very successful deal we had closed. As the evening progressed, more and more people left until Carla and I were the only ones remaining. I think I drank more than I should have because I did what I had promised myself I wouldn't do. Pressure Carla. You don't know me, she said, her words slightly slurred. I'm not the woman you think I am. I know exactly what kind of woman you are. You're the most amazing, attractive woman I've ever met, and I couldn't ask for more, I said firmly. Then, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions and intoxication, I grabbed her by the neck, pulled her close, and kissed her deeply on the lips. For a moment she resisted, but then her entire body seemed to surrender. She leaned into me and returned the kiss with equal passion. We reveled in the sensuality of the moment until some wise guy at another table made a comment about getting a room. And that, Carla pulled away and looked at me with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Jack, I have to go. She hurriedly left, leaving me sitting there, wondering what had just happened. Whatever it was, I decided I was more determined than ever. That kiss told me more about her true feelings than anything she could have said or done. The following week, I gave her space, hardly speaking to her. A few times I caught her glancing at me, but I acted as if I didn't notice. Let her feel what it's like to be uncertain about what's happening, I thought. I decided I would make my move on Thursday, and she made it easier for me. After lunch, she approached me, and it was clear that she wasn't the confident, self-assured woman I was used to. Jack, about what happened last Friday, I'm sorry if I... Not here, I interrupted her. If you want to talk, let's do it over dinner. I threw her off balance and she hesitated slightly. Then she seemed to make a decision, and her eyes signaled agreement. Okay, she said, over dinner. I didn't respond, but inside I was thrilled. When the workday finally ended, I approached her desk. Are you ready? I asked briefly, and she nodded obediently. I took her hand and led her out of the building to the curb, where I hailed a taxi. She got in without hesitation, and we drove in silence for most of the way. Finally, she looked around and asked, Where are we going? To my place, I said. I'll cook dinner for you. She nodded as if that was what she had been expecting all along. When we reached my building, I took her arm, and she allowed me to lead her without protest. We rode up in the elevator in silence. When I let her into my apartment and closed the door, she looked at me with a mix of agreement and anticipation, and I had no choice. I embraced her and kissed her passionately. If anything, she returned the kiss with even more passion. Then we began tearing each other's clothes off, desperately trying to establish the closest contact possible. With every piece of clothing she lost, the body that was revealed confirmed the sensual promise I had sensed in her from our first meeting. Simply put, she was the most desirable woman I had ever seen. Strangely enough, it wasn't any one part of her, her breasts, her hips, or her legs, that excited me the most. Rather, it was the combination of all of them that created such an irresistibly attractive woman. We left our clothes scattered all over the floor as I led her to my bedroom. Once there, I laid her on her back on my bed and began tracing kisses over every inch of her body. "Oh my God, what are you doing to me?" she cried out. When I didn't stop, her hands gripped the bedspread as if her life depended on it, while her body arched as if in prayer. For long seconds, no sound came from her throat, and then she let out a loud cry and collapsed onto the bed. I continued to caress her gently. "I've wanted this for so long," she breathed as I began to move rhythmically. I felt the tension building up inside me, and I could no longer hold back my feelings, so I started acting more confidently. Her moans grew louder. At the peak of our closeness, she let out a loud cry and collapsed onto the bed, fully relaxed. I lay down beside her, trying to hold on to this incredible feeling. After a while, I turned to her, started kissing her gently, and we embraced for a long time. Then I rolled away and got out of bed. "Wait here," I said, and walked over to my desk in the living room. When I returned, I brought a small box. "This is for you," I said. She looked anxious. "I can't accept a gift from you, Jack," she said. "Just take a look," I pleaded. When she opened the box, she found a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant made of two intricately intertwined metals. "It's beautiful," she said. "What is it?" "It's a Celtic knot, two strands intertwined to form an endless cycle. I bought it because it makes me think of how you've become intertwined with my life. Everything reminds me of you, and I can't do anything without thinking about you." She held her breath. "That's beautiful, Jack, but I can't—" I interrupted her. "It's a common design, so wearing it won't mean anything to anyone else. But you'll know what it means to me," I told her. "Please wear it for me." I took it from her, wrapped it around her neck, and fastened it. She stood up and walked to the mirror to look at it. "It's really beautiful," she murmured. Then she turned and kissed me. "Thank you, Jack." Suddenly, her gaze fell on my bedside clock, and she gasped. "Damn, I lost track of time. I have to get back home. Tomorrow's a big day." She quickly got dressed and headed for the door, stopping to kiss me and thank me again, for the necklace and for this evening. When she left, I felt a strange combination of excitement about deepening our relationship and disappointment at her departure. There was no denying it. I had fallen hard for her. The next day, I went to work with a happy heart, eager to see her again. I arrived early, but she still wasn't there, even after the usual start time. As it became clear that this wasn't just a few minutes of tardiness, I started to feel paranoid. Was she upset about what happened last night? Had she decided she didn't want to see me anymore? Did she quit her job? I didn't feel any better when Hank walked in, quickly resuming his obnoxious bragging. I listened distractedly until he said, "Hey, guess what? Carla asked me to meet her here this morning. Sorry, Jack, looks like the better man won again." Before I could process what he said and what it meant, Carla stepped through the doorway. Behind her was a man in a rumpled suit and a Chicago police uniform. The man in the suit approached Hank and me and asked, "Which one of you is Hank Malone?" Hank stared at him in surprise. "I'm Hank Malone. Who the hell are you?" The man pulled back the lapel of his jacket to reveal a badge pinned to the inside pocket. "I'm Detective Richard O'Brien with the Chicago Police Department. You are under arrest for fraud and insider trading. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the uniformed officer stepped forward to put handcuffs on him, Hank started shouting, "This is bullshit. I didn't do anything. You can't arrest me." His words had no effect on either officer as they led the protesting broker toward the door. The detective turned to Carla and said, "Thank you for everything. We'll be in touch." I could hear Hank's shouts echoing down the hallway. In shock, I turned to Carla. "What just happened?" "Please sit down, Jack, and let me explain. I told you that I'm not the woman you think I am. I'm an investigator with a security firm that specializes in white-collar crimes. Your company reached out to us to help identify the source of some suspicious trading they had discovered. We agreed to send an undercover investigator, and that's how I came to work here." She looked at me with an apologetic expression. "This is the part you won't like, Jack. We had two suspects, you and Hank. So I was asked to spend as much time as possible with both of you to try to determine who was involved." I felt all the happiness drain out of me. "So, all the time we spent together, Everything we talked about last night, was it all just an act? No, she said firmly. At first I wasn't sure about you, but after a week, it became clear that you were innocent. She looked down at the floor. At that point, I should have focused all my attention on Hank, but I found that I genuinely liked you and didn't want to stop spending time with you. Besides, it was obvious how you felt about me, and I don't think any woman alive wouldn't enjoy being desired. You were sweet, fun, and sexy, and I didn't want to lose that. She lowered her head. Anyway, the point is, I lied to you. I let you think I was one thing when I was really something entirely different. I wouldn't blame you if you hated me. They say hope, once dashed to the ground, can rise again, and I felt it growing inside me. But do you have feelings for me? I asked. Did you feel the same way I did? She nodded. Then none of this mattered, I exclaimed. I don't care if you're a cop or a commodities trader or anything else. I just want to be with you. Now that your investigation is over, there's no need to pretend anymore. There's nothing left to keep us apart. With those words, I moved closer and kissed her deeply, and she kissed me back, clinging to me with the same passion. But after we broke free from the embrace, she still couldn't look at me. There's something else, she said almost in a whisper. I'm married. I have a husband and a home in the suburbs. I staggered, feeling as if the wind had been knocked out of me. Now her face was tense. I have feelings for you, Jack, and I'd be lying if I said that last night wasn't wonderful. But I still love my husband, and I can't just leave him. I have to go back and work on our marriage, try to rekindle the feelings I once had for him. I simply must, Jack. She stood up. I'm very sorry, Jack, for everything. The best thing you can do is forget about me and find someone you can love. And more importantly, trust. I'm not that woman. At least I tried to warn you. She walked to the door but then turned back with a look of shame on her face. My name isn't even Carla, she said, and then she left. Jack finished his beer and set the mug down on the table. That's why I said I had the greatest love in the world. I was stunned. So when did all this happen? He shook his head in despair. This morning. She left my life this very morning. As I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about Jack's story. When I got home, I didn't feel like eating, so I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down, waiting for Bella. She had been working a lot lately, so I rarely caught her at home. Finally, I heard her car pull into the garage. When she walked in and saw me, she smiled and said, Oh, honey, what a day I've had. But I have some good news for you. We finally finished that big project I've been working on for so long. I won't be so busy anymore. I didn't say anything. In fact, she continued, that's what I want to talk to you about. I'm thinking about quitting my job. Lately, I've been feeling really exhausted, and I know I've been neglecting you. We need to spend more time together, take that vacation we've been putting off. Maybe we could even talk about having kids like you've always wanted. All of that is starting to sound really appealing to me. When I didn't respond, Bella looked at me with an apologetic expression and said, See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going on and on about my work and my problems, and I didn't even ask you about your day. That's something I'm going to work on, really paying attention to you like I did when we first got married. I think my silence started to worry her, and she nervously began to fidget with the small Celtic knot hanging on the chain around her neck. So did you meet up with your old college roommate today? Anything interesting happen in his life? She asked. I stood up and crossed my arms over my chest. With a voice full of bitterness and despair, I said, Funny that you should ask,